What's going on, guys? Stoked. Great show tonight. Got OK Calix on. And I've been following this cat for a while. Somebody I'm really stoked to chat with. Um, yeah, and then he tells me today or yesterday he's growing pineapple meatball. So yeah, we're gonna get a good chat in this evening. I'm really stoked. Trying to book some of these for the next few weeks. Next week we're gonna have a couple different podcasts on Wednesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, and then I think Friday and Saturday. There we go. Let's get Kayla.
Yo.
What's up, man?
All right, terpene.
How you doing?
I'm good. Hitting some Bluetooth real quick. I saw you hitting Big Fatty, looks like.
Yeah, man, I got some, this was the pineapple tart pheno. It was a ice cream man. I'm sorry, ice cream cake. I always get those confused. Ice cream cake pineapple sorbet. And of all the cuts that I've run, it's probably my least favorite. It's got kind of like a light lemongrass thing where like the rest of that line has had everything from kind of really exotic grape to like really heavy kind of citrusy thing, you know? And it's one that like I ran in my personal grow a lot because it's really dense and dank. You know,
Yep.
it just looks great and but as far as like 10 out of 10, it just doesn't check the resin and I mean the resin's there, but it just doesn't check the flavor box like I would like, you know.
Yep. That's how it goes.
So that's, you know, excuse me. Yeah, that's one of those things that, man, you know, in any breeding, you know, we're trying to check as many boxes as we can, but the reality is like sometimes you find those cuts and you go, man, it's 8 out of 10. You know, like if you're just running commercial flour,
Yeah.
Custies would eat it up, you know, all day long. And it just throws these big long spears. It's very ice cream cake in the structure, and you know, but it just didn't. The profiles just, you know. So I haven't really worked with that particular pheno, but it's one that I've run in the garden quite a bit just to, you know, just to keep head stats because it's dank and it throws down, you know.
So what all do you have in your garden? Like if I'm imagining a breeder's garden, you got all kinds of different stuff growing up or old stuff staying around?
It depends on what I'm working on, to be honest. Like I have a few things that are kind of staples, like things that I, you know, the Nag Champa, a couple of sorbet cuts, a couple, you know, things that I work with a lot. I keep kind of around. But to be honest, a lot of what I do comes from, you know, individual hunts. Like I'll start around, I'll pick, you know, a dad that I know I want to work with, and I'll run a whole round of just testing stuff from seed. Like I'll run, you know, seeds, cuts from that, and then test out the cuts really heavily, and then come back and seed, try, as much as I can, try and seed the original seed plants. Um, but it really depends on the project. It depends on what I'm working on. You know, kind of like anybody, I try to stage things so that I'm kind of planning a project ahead so that I'm, you know, always taking either cuts of what I need or, you know, getting speed tested stuff ready for, you know, whatever room I'm working on. But it depends, man. It really depends. Like I'm not keeping 400 mothers, you know. And I also don't run a ton of like clone only stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm
I
not
don't
running a
either.
ton
That's
of
too much
like
work, isn't it?
cut from this guy or cut from that guy. It just comes down to I'm not really into the dick waving contest of that, of like, is it that cut? Is it that person's cut? Is it the right cut? Because if it's any other cut, it's not worth a shit. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I like to find unique stuff. I like to find stuff that to me really just slaps me across the face. Um, and so, you know, I'm always looking for something different. But then when I find something that really I want to work with heavily down the line, you know, that's stuff I'll keep around a little bit heavier.
So how long have you had that Nag Champa?
I think that was a run I did in 2018. It was it was probably one of the
Dang.
first 5 big runs that I did when I started breeding full time. You know, like it was something I had fooled around with and done little projects for myself and stuff. And I hit a point in 2017 where I decided I was going to do it full time on my own, dedicated to seeds, and, you know, started working some older stuff that I had, started working some kind of stuff that I had that I didn't see other people running. And that's where I ran into the pineapple sorbet, which it's kind of a funny story. I had this dude hit me up on Instagram back before my first page got shut down, and I had, you know, plenty of people. This dude hits me up and he goes, "Man, I've got all these really expensive, really high dollar packs that I'm scared to run now." Like he had, you know, a bunch of aficionado, a bunch of old school exotic stuff, you know, the stuff that you'd get at a cup or at an event.
Yeah.
And so he hits me up and he's like, "Look, man, I'm scared to pop it. Like I've got so much in some of these packs, like I'm just scared." So he trades me over time, trades me, you know, it had to have been a couple grand worth of seeds for like my stuff. And it became like some of the lines that I started working earliest on, which was, you know, the pineapple sorbet I worked with. I worked with aficionado's white cherry truffle a bit. And then as well as kind of some of the older stuff that I had worked on in kind of personal projects and just tinkering around over the years. You know, I've always been growing, but it was really one of those where when I started growing, the only places you could really get seeds were like Mark Emery, Amsterdam, Canada.
Oh,
Or,
really?
you
Canada?
know,
I never
IC
got can.
Mag forums, maybe, you know, overgrowth forums. You might get lucky and find somebody that wanted to trade. But like as far as commercially available seeds in the late 90s, the only thing that was out there was really Mark Emery, Amsterdam, or go to Canada. And
Oh.
when, you know, I was probably 16-ish, 15-ish when I first started growing weed. So the only thing we had access to was bag seed, you know, and if I made seeds, it was out of kind of necessity at that point of just, you know, whatever I needed to put together to make sure I had seeds of what I loved and what I wanted to toy with. And, but I'll be honest, man, I wish back then some of that stuff I'd have gone at with like an eye towards, I'm going to need this 20 years down the road, you know, and there were so many genetics back then that I worked with that I wish I had today. There was a double purple doja mental floss that I fell in love with this was
I heard that.
probably in the early seed bay days. It was a grower called Outlaw Grower. I think it's Outlaw Grower, maybe Outlaw Breeder or something like that. And he dropped a bunch of double purple doja crosses that back then, like I didn't really know where to get any of that, or, you know, once again, I only really knew a couple places to get seeds. So anything that came along that was really special, like we would make F2s, or we would, you know, kind of make a line of our own and combine two of our favorites. And then kind of 2017, 2018, I was like, man, I had done most everything else, commercial growing. You know, I'd run decent sized commercial grows in Colorado and just kind of got tired of the hassle, the hustle. You know, it's a whole thing working in commercial grows,
Yep.
and it's just one of those that, like, to me, if my worst problem every day was plant related, I was doing good. But it was almost
It's
always dealing
nothing
with
plants, huh?
people,
Yeah.
dealing with growers, dealing with owners, dealing with investors. And it just gets to a point where it's like, yeah, I don't know. And so, you
Yeah.
know,
It's
you
more fun at home.
do you run a commercial grow?
No, I don't run one. I did in 2000, about 2018, 19, and 20, and
Yeah.
then stopped it. It was a lot of work. I mean, I got 5 kids, two other businesses. I was running that. I was getting home at 2:30 in the morning, and I was still behind at a grow.
Yeah, man, it's a 20-year-old's game. I'll be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
it's the whole of large scale commercial growing, man, there's a reason it's mostly 16 to 18-year-old kids or 18 to 21-year-old kids, all young, you know, anybody that wants to grow weed, and largely the commercial game will always be kind of a rotating cast of younger kids. And I just love weed and I just want to grow, you
Yep.
know, and there's a lot of that attitude. I will say, man, I was super stoked to see you were running the pineapple meatball. That's awesome.
So that's out at Legends Cannabis Company. That's here. That's about 15 miles from my house, and I've been with them basically from the beginning.
Gotcha.
And I go out there and I will kind of see what they're running, look at their plants, sex them for them. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
just they got lots to do, and so I'm out there just checking plants for them constantly and giving suggestions. You know, and I'd suggested a couple pineapple meatball crosses. I've crossed your stuff probably 4 or 5 times. Nag Champa and pineapple meatball, you know, different things. Because they're both pineapple meatball is huge. It's
Yeah.
just really big, and that's what they liked about it. So anyway, I told them I had some some terpene crosses that we ought to try to run commercially, see what they do. And I had a cut of pineapple meatball that I grew from seed, and I had it for probably 3 years. And we tried it out, and it got huge under their lights. You know, in
Awesome.
my little shed over here, yeah, it does fine, but I can't pull out the epigenetics or anything like that. It just gives me what it gives me. But when you can go to some commercial grow that's spending money on stuff, that thing got it. You know, that thing got half as big as my fist. I mean, they were big, chunky nugs. And then they had a big mother, and you remember those clones I showed you? You know, they were huge. They were in those
Right.
hydrocloners, and I just showed them like you can make massive cut clones if you'll use that, you know, that hydroponic cloner. And
Yeah,
we
yeah,
got
yeah.
a bunch going. So they probably got about, I'd guess around 200 to 300 pineapple meatballs, and that's going to be in one room in this next run.
That's in
But then the
Oklahoma.
next thing I want to do, yes, in
Yeah.
Oklahoma, just in the Tulsa area, basically. But I crossed my Bluetooth your pineapple meatball, and that's the one I want to run because they're both real girthy, real big, and I just kind of want to, you know, see what happened. But the yeah, Legends Cannabis Company, shout
So
out to them. They're good
the
guys.
funny thing about the meatball from seed is that there's still some of those. I always just call them the mutant leaf phenos from the meat breath, and you can almost tell them by week 2 or 3 of veg because the leaves just start doing this weird crinkle thing. And every time I've selected in the meatball line, my goal was to select for the ones, like you said, that are chunky, but that have parentage as far as the profile, that have a little bit from both parents. So a little bit of like that. I've heard people describe it as like Italian spices.
Yep.
It's really meaty
Spaghetti, median spaghetti.
spaghetti.
Yes,
But
I
then
told them.
there's
Good.
some that also have like a pineapple thing, which is really weird because it kind of lives up to the name, you know?
Yeah. So the first time I grew that pineapple meatball out from seed, I smelled a blood irony smell. It had a kind of a stink to it, but it was almost a sharp stink, and it was like a meaty, irony, weird smell. Anyway, I told him that, and I said that's why I was so interested in this thing to see what it would do. The weird smells, and I mean that's why it's terpene stuff. It's just crazy, crazy smells coming off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a big fatty, stinky mama. But yes, spaghetti sauce. It will
Yeah.
have a spaghetti sauce
Yep.
smell. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very Italian spices, very distinct meat, which is weird because it's not always like a cooked meat. It's almost like that, like you said, kind of iron nickel, like raw
Nickel.
meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the funniest thing about the sorbet, because
Yeah.
it's
Tell
got
me about the
a really
sorbet. I've
unique.
never grown that. I've never grown it.
I'd have to look up the exact genetics again, but
I know.
it's in the pines, Skittles. Uh, there's the pineapple Thai, and then there's one other in the cross. I don't have it in front of me, and
Yeah.
it's a
No
big cross.
worries.
But anyway, so as the crosses that I've done, most of the ones have really added like a candy pineapple, a candy incense, like as this unique. You don't want to call it floral, but you don't want to call it citrus.
Yeah.
Like it's very unique.
That's what that
But
Nag
then as
Champa
I've kind of
does.
made some, yeah, that's the thing with the Nag Champa. So like the Nag Champa was a Girl Scout cookie alien Wi-Fi Tangy cross essentially for the mother, and then the pineapple sorbet. almost all of those have, like, it's not, when people ask me, does it smell like Nag Champa? No, but it smells like incense. It's very complex. It's like notes on top of notes. Like, it's really one of those that you tend to hit over and over again just to try and pick out and describe that smell.
That's
Yeah,
what he's talking about. If you don't understand, if you didn't know what Nag Champa is, this is an incense named Nag Champa, and I guess that's what you named after. I
it's
don't know, but that.
absolutely,
Okay.
it's probably the standard for incense in my
Yeah,
opinion. Like,
totally. It's
it's the
totally the
best
one.
of the best.
Yes, it's totally the one. I agree. I love burning incense. I mean, I've got it. You can tell I've got it. Nag Champa.
Right.
So yeah, I took let me see. I took I took your Nag breath and I crossed, or sorry, I took your Nag Champa and I crossed it to a strain I have called TKLB. It's super heavy kush and lots of color. Well, all of my blueberry breath line that these guys grow, that's blueberry muffin crossed with TKLB. So a lot of the guys have grown out Nag breath, and it's a big, beautiful plant outside, and they always turn real orange looking. And the buds are fat, got a great floral, fruity smell. They say super pretty plant. That's on my OK Calyx genetics page. But I crossed Nag Champa to TKLB, and then I crossed that Nag breath to Romulan blueberry, just this last blueberry
That's
run. So it's a crazy one.
that's just awesome.
I haven't
Yeah,
even grown that out yet, man. That's a pack of them right here. All I got is a little short breed, individual branch breeding I did.
yeah.
And then I crossed your pineapple meatball to my Bluetooth. And then I kind of crossed both your stuff a little bit. I crossed the pineapple meatball to the Nag breath. So that's like 3/4 you, 1/4 mine. But yeah, I've done a lot of crossing just because and it wasn't
That's
random.
awesome.
It was like I want the two smells and
Yeah,
see what happens.
yeah. And
So
see, the thing about the pineapple sorbet, so like I until the F3, I hadn't seen this pheno, and this is funny because it's probably the one of the strains I've worked with the most. I've seen most of what it, in the earliest F1s and F2s. I saw a lot of what it had to offer. So in the F3s, I found this pheno that reminded me of just straight black pepper, like old school haze,
I like
but
that.
just straight black pepper. But the beautiful thing was it didn't have like little wispy buds like most strains that you would think of that have that kind of profile. Like most of your ties are generally not huge yielders,
Right.
and but this yielded just like the pineapple sorbet crosses do. Like it had a nice chunk to it, but the profile was entirely different than anything else I've seen. And everything in that line is either heavy citrus, heavy fruit. I like to say it's really tropical. Like it reminds me of a fruity drink on the beach with some coconut notes and some pineapple notes. And but yeah, that cross you just mentioned with the blueberry Romulan, there's
Yeah,
no way that doesn't stack. There's no way that doesn't stack.
yeah, dude. I grew it was called blueberry abduction. It was a blueberry squealer across the ramen and blueberry, and it was big. I didn't top it or anything, but that meristem, is 1.5 foot long. It was outside plant and nice and frosty. And I didn't do anything with it though. I didn't wash it. I didn't smoke it. I had so much flour from this Bluetooth stuff that I was growing.
Yeah,
It's like, man, I can't do anything with it. And I don't want to give a guy one plant and then four big plants, and try to
right,
separate them.
right.
So I didn't try it, but it was a real pretty plant when I grew it.
Have you? Are you originally from Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'm a Oklahoman. Yeah.
So you've kind of watched their program from the ground floor, whatever it started as,
Oh yeah.
kind of the migration of the most of the Colorado growers and breeders and extractors that kind of came, 16, 17, 18, I guess it would probably been, maybe a
18.
little later,
Yeah,
18.
18. August
And,
18.
how do you, what do you think's right and what do you think's not working about the way it's currently set up?
I don't have I don't have okay, so our legislative body is called OMMA. I don't remember exactly, Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Association or something like that. But you have to deal with OMMA right now. Well, I mean, you always have to. But one of the things that I have found talking to a lot of commercial growers and not so much processors, but commercial growers. OMMA has put a system called metric on these guys,
Yeah,
and
everybody uses metric.
right,
Almost every
and
legal state. Yeah.
I can see they all kind of follow each other, but there's a lot of hassle that's put on these guys. And I think there's a whole lot of possibly intentional confusion or ambiguity somewhat. Because these poor guys, man, they're always like, anytime a inspector comes, there's like some new thing. They're like, oh man, I had no idea. You know, I know that one issue at the very beginning, whenever they're like, okay, Oklahomans, go for it. Here's your licenses and start growing. You know, find your spot. A lot of these guys built beds out of wood, or they would build you know, lung rooms inside of areas, you know, but they would build out of wood. And the inspectors come along and said immediately that you cannot build in wood, you know, it's going to burn down.
No.
And, you know, a lot of these little issues like that set some of these guys back a lot of money because they already put their life saving into it. A bunch of people did.
Yeah, right.
And
They don't care about that. The state only
not at
cares about
all.
getting their tax money. And that's it.
That's exactly right. And I'm exact same way. I'm sick of government. I don't trust any authority right now. I do me, and that is it. I look out for my family, and that's what you have to do because we've been lied to so much. And that's why I
Yeah.
say I feel like a lot of this stuff is a lot of games. I also feel like a lot of people that are in positions of power to make decisions, they're not familiar with a cannabis lifestyle, a cannabis situation, a
No.
need for cannabis for mental health, like me.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
They're not aware of
absolutely.
these things, and they don't legislate accordingly whatsoever. And you know, if I was the guy that was in there, I'd totally be doing it a lot better. But it's because I know what these growers are going through. I know what grows look like. Most of the grows aren't pretty. Most of the grows are rough, you know, because they're behind constantly. Like you said, they're not messed with plants or messed with issues, other issues. And so they're not just wonderful, beautiful grows often that you go
Yeah,
to.
right.
Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of them that are super nice, and don't get me wrong. I'm saying I deal
No,
with a
you're
lot
right.
of small guys to
No,
try to help them
you're
out.
absolutely, you're telling the story, man. Like there's nothing you're saying that we haven't, that almost haven't talked about before. And that's kind of what the interesting thing about these conversations is, because so many people that see the other side of the commercial grow are often in bed with people. Oh, I think we just left them. I think you just lost them. Hey, like, shoot me another follow. Anyway, so a lot of the people that, you know, have a vested interest in commercial grows aren't the type of people that are then going to go talk about the shitty shit that's going on behind the scenes, because they're the people that often have, you know, a vested interest in making sure that it stays, you know, kind of shady, and people that know things that are going on. Um, One sec, guys. Yeah, they want to make sure that people that know, and people that don't know don't know. And hey, you're good, man. We got you back.
Yeah, I can't see me.
Oh,
Okay, sorry. I
you're
heard
good, man.
everything you said, but I hit
And
the wrong
so the
dang button.
people that
Keep
know
going
things
about
about the bad side of the commercial industry aren't the people that, you know, they usually aren't the people speaking up loudly about it. You know, it comes from like a disgruntled worker, or it comes from somebody who's, you know, and people just go, oh, well, you know, he's just bitter. But the reality is, the people that see this stuff and are able to say, like, hey, commercial dispensary weed, especially in states that don't have rec and stringent laws, it's a little shady. It's still, all of it is still a little shady. And there's so much of it, especially when it comes to pesticide handling, you know, worker safety, worker rights. It's just something that the people that are able to discuss that aren't the people that are running the grows. They need it to stay the way it is, because everybody's just concerned about getting their money and making sure the
it.
taxes get paid. That's all anybody cares about.
Yeah. Yeah, what I wish is that they would let one issue as a grower is to let them grow the plant like a freaking tomato plant. Let it be a plant, because there's a lot of things going on, like, you know, you have to do it indoors and in rooms, and the lights have to be a certain distances and things like that from ceilings, just for fire code and stuff like that. And for me, it's like if you would let them grow their own style in their own environment, they'll produce a better product for you. And because they're fighting issues that don't fit their environment or don't fit their grow room or their style that they're wanting to do. I think that if you want to legislate more, you need to do it on the safety of the patient. You need to make sure that because I can promise you, there are plenty of ways to get some cannabis in the system that probably hasn't been
Absolutely.
tested.
No, absolutely.
Now, that's where it needs to be, because I don't want to be, because I go to these grows, like I said, and I've seen flower that I'm like, don't put that on the market. I'm telling you right now, as OK Calyx, don't put that on the market. I'm telling you. And if it goes up, it's on them. I don't know, but I'll tell them the facts, because that doesn't need to go to anybody who is looking for mental health
Safe
through
medicine.
cannabis. They need, and if you ask me, go get some organic stuff. You know what I'm saying? Go get some organic hash rosin if you can. That would be the best thing. But get the testing on the medicine, and make sure that it's real legit good testing, because man, anytime I go to dispensary, which I don't buy flower at all dispensary, I look at it, it's not good looking flower. There's a lot of flower, but there's not any that's really good looking flower. There is some, don't get me wrong, but the most of it is not what you want. And that goes back to the growers. They're the one that grew it. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones that grew it. And maybe it was their best go, maybe they had a bad run, but this sounds braggart, and it's not. But the flower that I grow at home, you would put on your top shelf at that dispensary, because I can grow in my own environment and my own way and do my JLF and my organics, and I can get it out of my plant, because I know my setup perfectly, and I don't have anybody coming in and telling me what to do and how to do it, when to be there, and all that stuff. So the medicine,
and the
focus on the medicine,
and the people that consume your product. Like, that's the two things. It doesn't just necessarily mean customer service and having a nice setup, but it really comes down to standing behind whatever product you produce. And the big problem that I've seen, if we're talking about the entire commercial weed industry, whether it be California, Washington, Colorado, any legal state, the problem is there's no grading. Like, what you think of top shelf, right, wouldn't even be in most dispensaries. What you or I consider top shelf, you won't even find in a dispensary. So the real trick is that so many of these dispensaries, they grew it, and now they've got to sell it, because they have to cover their nut.
Yeah.
They've invested so much into this grow at this point, they have to sell it. And there's no thought to, this is garbage. This would not pass even middle tier smokers for anything other than pre-rolls, where somebody's just going to take it, light it up, and not even think twice about what's in it. And that's really, let's be honest, man, that's going to really be, of the entire weed market going forward, that's going to be the one thing that, like, so many people are going to get into, just going and buying a pack of pre-rolls, like a pack of cigarettes at the gas station. I don't really care. I just need a pack of joints, because there's really not a focus on quality. And so many people are really just going to grab whatever they can grab once whatever huge company, that can't invest in it right now finally decides to fully invest. And you can just go down to your local gas station or liquor store or wherever it is that they license it to be able to be bought. But once again, anybody that's buying pre-rolls, the real thing is that you're not looking at what you're smoking, so they'll sell you anything, man. Like, they'll sell you anything in a pre-roll joint. I've seen it all. Like, fucking anything. Like, anything they can grind up that looks green in a joint. And so there's no grading of product generally, unless you have a dispensary that really has kind of focused exclusively on quality. If you have any commercial grow, they don't just, we're not just pumping out weed, we're not just pumping out product and packs, and it's, somebody actually cares about the weed that's grown. Man, that's where the market really has to eventually go.
I think one thing that I often do, and that it will help people out, is instead of looking at that name and that content,
Yep.
ask who grew it, where did it,
Yep.
what grow did it come from, right? That's what's a really good thing, because you can look those guys' Facebook and Instagram pages up. You can see how they grow and all that stuff. You know, you can see if that flower that they grew,
Yeah. Right.
it didn't look like
Right.
this,
Right.
or it did. You know what I'm saying? You should be able to look back and see what they're doing, and then be like, okay, so either they grow salts or organics or indoor, outdoor, whatever the case may be. But that's my advice to people. Go to dispensaries and ask who grew this. Who did you buy it from? I promise you the bud tenders probably won't know, but
Yeah.
they
I
can
mean,
find out real quick.
the one thing that you
That'll
said
give you some
there
help.
that kind of is more important to have this discussion than just about anything else is like, as a discerning customer, just simply asking for your strongest, THC percentage is going to be guaranteeing you're going to get just garbage, because usually in most states, one of two things happens there. They have a good relationship with the testing lab that every now and then will sneak them one that's a little bit higher, and especially in states that haven't been legal or haven't been still have medical programs where there's not stringent testing and there's some sort of oversight and there's some sort, then you see a lot more 30 plus percent THC strains, when in reality, and I would rather have something I could smell through 3 jars with a middle tier THC percentage, 18-20%, and high terps than 30% and nothing impressive flavor wise. And that's, it's down to personal
Yep,
preference. If you want strong, smoke hash.
exactly. Dude, that's exactly right. And let me shout out right here, my Katani boys right here smoking on their stuff. These are some good guys. But yes, if you want high THC, quit buying flour. You got to switch over to concentrates. It's that easy. Buy hash, get hash. Because yeah, once you put a mark of about 21 or more, I start blanking out on you, because the first thing I think is, I don't know. I would rather see that 18% and be
Heavy
some kind of
Mercy.
granddaddy
Heavy
purple or purple
Mercy.
oracle,
Yeah.
something I know is yummy. Yes, heavy myrcene, that's right. Low THC. I'm
So
riding. I'm riding
here's the
good. I
here's
feel
the one
vibey
thing
and
that
excited.
I try to harp on about myrcene, right? So that's why the joke was for years and years, like, eat mangoes or peppercorns, because it would get myrcene in your system. The truth about myrcene and high myrcene strains, because myrcene helps THC cross the blood-brain barrier, your THC is more bioavailable. So your body is going to
Mm.
intake more of it, more of what's there. So that's why one thing that I kind of did for a while was I would give people strains that I knew were high myrcene, and I wouldn't tell them anything about it. And it was always a strain that would just put them on their ass to sleep. Veteran smokers, big fat joint of blackout truffle, right? They're going to sleep. But a lot of the tests that we've seen, they're not 30%. They're not 30%. Anecdotally, I've had people, and this is not marketing. I don't have to sell my strains like that. It's not. I had people hit me up and say my customers are scared of it. They, I'm not joking. This happened more than once. They were like, my customers are scared of it. And when the tests came back, it's mostly middle 20s, 25, 26%, and heavy myrcene. And it's because you're able to get more of the THC that's there, so you need less of it anyway. But the other truth is, yeah, if the only thing that matters to you is walking in a dispensary and saying, just give me the 30 percenters, start smoking hash. If you live somewhere like that, you can always smoke a different strain of hash every day. You can always get high if getting high is a problem for you, because that is the case for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that just have high tolerance, and you hit a point where you just, and if you're just about twisting one up, I'm not hating. But the reality is that if that's all that matters to you is just high THC, yeah, smoke concentrates. It's easier. It's easier on your lungs.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's one tough thing about breeding is smoking through flower and stuff like that, just getting the taste of what the flower's like. I'm always coughing heavy anytime I smoke the flower. And it always, once you smoke a lot of hash and you go back to smoking flower, you taste the carbon ash. You taste the terp, but you taste, the terpene is in there and that THC is in there, but you're smoking the
Right,
leaf and
right,
a little
right.
of the stem and the little chlorophyll, stuff like that. And so you taste that the carbon ash to it too. That's always rough, but yeah, way better for you on your lungs, if you ask
But it's
me.
just
And make sure it's hash,
It's
not
just
that
generally speaking,
BHO.
plant matter is not great to inhale on fire, like especially unfiltered. Like as much as we don't want to admit it, and just because it's not necessarily carcinogenic, it doesn't mean it's good on your lungs. Anybody that's smoked heavy for a while, it's you feel it. Like you feel it. Like yeah, you feel it. And there's just a certain amount of like, if you can smoke less and do any less anything to your body, yeah, that's the goal. Because by the time you're asking exclusively for 30% strains, that's where you've gotten, because you've probably just got a heavy flower habit. Not a problem. You just smoke a ton of flower. Yeah, try concentrates. I mean, if you haven't found hash, that's a whole beautiful, beautiful world. And it's the thing is, when we're talking about flavors, to be honest, once you get to hash, you get a true taste of the true expression of the plant. And depending on what kind of hash you smoke, how fresh it is, how much terp retention there was in the hash, then you really get into a discussion of tasting the true essence of the plant, but at the same time in as clean of a product as almost possible, especially if you're smoking, melts and rosin and solventless. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as a breeder, that's the real level. We don't have a huge discussion about. There's a ton of different ways that terpenes express. So when we talk about a plant as growers and we say, well, what's the profile like? Generally, if it's a grower that's telling me the answer, I generally expect them to describe the live plant and the bud as it's dried, right? Whereas if I'm asking somebody who maybe isn't, super versed, or we're talking profiles, they want to know, what does the flower taste like exclusively? Like, what's the profile of just the flower? Because as a grower,
Yeah.
you get more hands-on time from every stage of the plant through growth. And I don't know about you, like, I'm not in there fingering my plants, but because I do a decent amount of pruning, because I do a decent amount of deleafing, like, I can usually tell you what it's all over your hands at that point. So each one that you work with, you kind of
Sure.
develop almost a running terp profile, because some of them will come in with one thing and then middle flower something completely different, and then by the end of flower it could be something completely different, because then you get those two things and some other late flower notes and unique things on top of it. But for me, that's why I always fell in love with hash, was because you're getting everything the plant has to offer in its most pure taste, in its most pure form. Yeah, and that's, to me, is I love flower. Like, I've always loved flower. I'm old school that I'll always twist up and smoke. But I will be honest, man, there's a point later on, you've been smoking for 20 plus years, where you go, any less in my lungs is probably better for me. And I always like to be of one of the filter, water, anything like that, a bubbler, a rig, a bong even is a little bit healthier than just smoking like raw dog pipes, joints specifically, because that's paper. Yeah, yeah,
Hurts your
yeah.
throat. Hurts my throat. Yeah, it always hurts my throat. So what? Anything new you
Let
got
me
coming
see.
up?
I just put out kind of two back to back, so I kind of did. I had surgery
I saw
earlier
you
this
put out a lot
year.
of stuff.
Was kind of down for a while, and so I kind of backstocked some things. And so I did the Lucky Charms project, which was from a pack of Bodhi Lucky Charms, the white Appalachia. Um, it's one of those things that had been kicking around my box for a while. I don't see anybody else working with it. I don't see him, I don't see Bodie working with it. Um, so I had some laying around. I wanted to do an F2 with a particular eye towards kind of hash plants and stuff like that. Um, and then I did kind of a handful of just really dank crosses that I had laying around. In my runnings of that strain, I used to run a cut in a couple of commercial dispensaries in Colorado. And then it was another place that we used to smoke it all the time. Another dispensary that had like a, 5% cut that just dumped water and just was beautiful and gorgeous 6-star melt and rosin. And it was a strain I knew worked well with hash if you find a good pheno. What I've kind of found with it is, and in my selection, I kind of picked for more of the kind of cereal, like almost an empty bowl of cereal profile, versus there's kind of some more cushy ones in that. I'm a Kush fanatic. Once again, most Kush test high in myrcene. So, like,
Yeah.
if I can fuck with Kush and I can just get everybody to smoke a little bit more Kush in their lives, that's what I try to do. Like, I kind of joke that's the overarching theme of most of my work is that I'll slip just Kush strains in on people, heavy Kush strains, and just mix it with other stuff. So the terp drip and stuff like that was really just my attempt to get people to smoke more dank Kush. But if you could kind of make it a little, let's be honest, heavy Kush, especially if we're talking about like chocolatey, kind of woody Kush, right?
Yeah.
Is not it can be an acquired
Like
taste for some
incense.
people. So like really finding those phenos that
Yep.
mix well with other stuff, but still kind of keep that pine, peat, earth type of profile that we all love from just generally in Kush, the myrcene heavy stuff too. And that's why I fell in love with banana. Anytime anybody says anything banana to me, like generally most banana strains tend to test high, really high in myrcene. So if you ever see me like, I got to get some of that, it's usually something banana these days. Banana Kush, the Oregon Kid banana, any banana. Just give it to me all day.
Really? I crossed banana trail mix with berry cherry on this last run, and that's actually what's loaded in this bong right here. I've been testing it. It's delicious. It's got the dank, cushy stank to it, and then it has that sweet. It's a sweet finish. It's not
Yeah,
a light. It's a heavy sweet finish. So it goes kush to sweet. On that blowout, it's sweet. On the smell,
right.
it's
So
kush. And the
anybody that's
blowout,
ever
it's
run,
sweet.
I think somebody mentioned OG Kush. One of the things that I always have to bring up with OG Kush, while OG Kush is an amazing strain and there's tons of great hybrids and it's a great strain to work with, it's not what I think of as a traditional Kush. Like it's definitely got some, I want to say some Southeast Asian in it somewhere. It branches really heavy. It doesn't stack traditionally like a Kush does on. If we think Kush and we're thinking like Master Kush, if we're thinking your old school Afghan, deep chunks,
I'm
stuff
thinking
like that,
Master
they
Kush.
tend to
Yeah.
grow one hard, thick meristem, like one huge thick stalk, and then just throw buds up the
Yep.
stalk, and they tend to stack pretty well. And when you look at OG Kush, man, just its structure, everything about it. So one of my favorite things to do in general is to take any OG strain and hit them back to like a hardcore Kush, which that's exactly what I'm kind of looking at doing next. Like I was going to hit the two projects. I just did the pineapple sorbet too. And that was kind of the end of that project period. Like I'm gonna go back to the
Really
F1s
done
and try and
with it.
see what else is there because that whole pepper pheno thing made me really think there's more stuff there that maybe I didn't get in the first swing. But yeah, next projects are it's either gonna be so we keep having a running joke on some of these that I do with people about the poopene fetish, which is essentially the entire um, lifestyle of describing how stinky and funky and diapers and onions and people that literally that's their whole thing is and it's Yeah. Oh no,
and
just
they
all
smell
strains
like
in
that.
general that like hit on anything negative, anything like when you think of just skunky or pissy or spoiled food. GMO's a good one, you know, a good example. You know, a lot of the chems have a lot of like really nasty onion BO. Yeah.
Skunky
But that's
tar.
becoming a whole subculture of people. They're starting to meet on the internet in little groups, and they pretty much talk dirty to each other about their strains in as rancid a terms as they can come up with. And yeah, it's kind of funny. It's become a whole thing. And the more we talk poopenes,
Poopene?
oh, like terpenes and poopenes. The poopenes are all the negative, shitty
Yes.
smelling, the diaper, the scatol, it smells like poop. But I mean, like there's a whole, you know, somebody a minute ago said something about sours, like that whole, you know, anything with those chems and with a lot of it, it's just stinky. Yeah, stinky. You know, the running joke is everybody thinks skunk is dead. I think most of the people looking for it probably weren't around when it was here. The few people that do remember it, and if anybody grew it, like there's a reason it's not around anymore. But it's one of those that like kind of fills
They
that
like it.
point of people just love foul, stinky, smelly socks, mop bucket. I had one that what did I do? The banana OG. It was the Ghidorah, banana Ghidorah mints. It was a Kush mints cross. And I kind of had like it might have been around the time we caught COVID. And I was sick for a couple of days. And it smelled like a moldy wash rag. And I had to like look, I was
Mm.
going through I don't use rags. I don't usually have cleanup or anything like that. You know, like I don't leave stuff in the situation while I'm working. So I knew there wasn't, but every day I would go in there and look for like a moldy, wet rag. And it was just this Cushman's cross. And it literally smelled like an old wash rag that was left in mop water. And I don't know, man. It was this
Yeah.
weird thing where after I got better and I smelled it, I was like, it is smell like that, but it's definitely kind of something I would hit again, you know, as weird as that is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you are seeing
I
it
would,
again. Yeah, I've had. I went to. I've smelt some of those, and you know, I'll crack those jars open that haven't been cracked open very much, and you sniff it and just pull your head back, and it's just like a bad armpit onion, just spat. You're like, oh, and then
yeah, I had
hit it
one
again.
recently. I had to remember what it was. It was a Gelato 33 cross to zebra cakes, and I ran some for personal. I was doing some testing, ran some for personal. Every time I open the jar, right? So OG Kush has this thing. I always say OG Kush, we always describe it as like gassy. That's how most people describe it, gassy, piney, you know. But the reality is it doesn't really smell all that much like gasoline. Kind of reminds me of like mustard and vinegar. Like it's got this point where if you took a poopy diaper, like a diarrhea diaper, and kind of met it to like a pine tree peat, peat bog, you know, like a fresh thing of Sunshine 4, right? That's a good way to think of it, you know, just wet, dank earth. Like
Yeah,
this particular strain, it had a bad,
hummus.
like, hits you with diarrhea, just a stank, but then it has like its kind of progressive gassiness as you kind of smell it a little more.
So tell me about that skunk 706
So
then.
that was
Was it?
originally one of those that was an old project from before. I had a 91 chem cross to a deep chunk that I had made way back in the like off the forums. I got two strains. I want to say originally it was one that I had gotten and then did a couple crosses of myself and worked with for a little while. And then I crossed that to some skunk number one pollen. And I don't even at this point remember because that was a while back. I don't remember who donated the pollen
Wow.
offhand. But the reason that I kind of lead people away from that one particularly is because it's not what people think of traditionally with skunk. So the skunk kind of broke down as more of like a onion body odor kind of thing, which, let's be honest, if somebody who doesn't really know skunk, like that might be skunky. You know, but there's the kind of this thing now in weed where if it doesn't smell like skunk spray, don't call it skunk. And I had done that because there was skunk in
Right.
it, skunk number one in it. But then as I kind of got working with other skunkies, like I did another pine tar skunk across a white cherry wedding cake. And I have those on the website, Slammer Skunk. It's more driving towards the skunk lane, more skunk spray, you know, and it's like the problem is there was so much stuff at any point that's been sold as skunk, you know, that the truth is there's a lot of stuff out there that was legitimately sold as skunk, and it just doesn't have the traditional skunky. It's foul smelling, and it's where we get a lot of those like spoiled food, bad Thai food, just like a lot of the kind of meaty stuff, like those kind of profiles. But it's not what people think of traditionally as skunk. Now, tell somebody that paid $200 in Amsterdam that the seeds they brought back that were called skunk aren't really skunk, and they're going to lose their mind. But to anybody who's breeding and remembers old school skunk, like there are still skunky strains out there. There's strains that have, you know, a heavy skunk profile to them. Like I said, even some of the chems like have a lot of skunky notes, but it's not just that.
So there's that guy, you know, I don't want to mention his name. He's all controversial. He's across the
Oh,
pond,
yeah.
though, and he's always saying that it's the skunkiest skunk. Have you ever grown those out before? I've never even smelled them. I have no idea. All I know is the chat.
Yeah, I just don't. That's a whole level of politics that I just don't. Doesn't matter to me. Like I'm more of the flavor.
I don't know.
No.
I
Like
just
I'm
want
just
to know what
more
it
of the
smells
flavor
like.
guy that knows there's skunky weed out there, and I don't really need anybody else to tell me that. Now, the thing that those guys like to argue about is a very specific cut, and it's or a specific, you know, naming of a strain. They're not looking for skunky weed. Skunky weed doesn't phase any of it. They're literally just wanting to argue once again about, do you have the right cut? Is this the cut? Is this the only cut? Do you have a cut that nobody else has? That doesn't really exist, man. Like everybody has the whole gene pool available to them at this point. There's skunky weed out there. If you just want skunky strains, they're out there. They exist. Now, if you're looking for a 1977 cut of skunk that only came from Northern California and that nobody else in the world has seen since, you tell me where the Ark of the Covenant is. I don't, you know, I just don't care to get into those sort of arguments because it doesn't matter to me as a breeder whether they have roadkill skunk or whether they have, you know, Bobby's blue sky skunk, or it doesn't change whether I can smoke skunky weed or not.
So here's my deal. I
Yeah,
don't grow skunk. I don't grow much stinky. I don't
really.
grow anything on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
side. I like the fruity because that's what I smoke. So my point is, one day I want to
Mhm.
cross it with a stinker, and you know I don't want to waste my time going through a
Yeah,
bunch of stinkers.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I want to go to that one that people be like, yeah, it's armpity, it's oniony, it's tarry,
yeah.
it's corpsey, you know, whatever. I just want to
Since
hit
I
that one
started
and
selling
go
my
at it.
own seeds full time, my goal was always to have a flavor for every profile. So if you hit me up and you said, I
Right.
hate fruity strains, I just want, you know, stinky, skunky stuff, I have something for you. If you say I love fruity, tropical stuff, I got something for you, you know. But yeah, there was a lot of, if you're into one thing and that's what you focus on, do it and do it well, you know. But like as a breeder, I have people hit me up all the time and go, I don't like citrus. What do you got? or I don't like this. What do you got? Like, you know, and so you kind of have to be versatile and try and work with a little bit of everything. But like when I smoke, I'm kind of all over. I like a little bit of everything. I'll hit something today and then be over it in 2 days and want, you know, something on the complete opposite end. And that's the real thing.
Yeah.
If you're a high tolerance smoker, man, your best bet is to have, you know, different terp profiles and constantly just hit different flavors, because that's the real way to deal with that instead of needing 30% flower. Yeah, right.
That's the fun way. That's the fun way is going through the flavors, you know, real contrasting it back and forth throughout the day. That's what I like. I'm smoking sweet blueberry, and that Katani is a garlic. So it's just two big different. It's hit harsh
Yeah, and I
differences
mean,
every time I hit it. So
I'll
I'm
hit a
bouncing
strain
back
and
and
be
forth.
over it in 2 days, and then in 4 months I'll swear it was the greatest thing I ever hit, and be like, I got to go back and work on that again, you know. Anyway, man, we're pretty much out of time. That hour went pretty quick. Yeah,
I went fast,
absolutely.
dude. We gotta do it again. It's
Absolutely,
fun,
man.
chilling, talking.
The whole thing about these is, like I said, just being able to have these kind of OG conversations and people be able to hear like what other growers that, you know, have done a few rounds now
Yeah.
have to say. And because a lot of these conversations we all have over and over and over with each other, but then people that aren't growers or people that aren't, you know, involved with weed don't really ever hear any of that, you know. So it's just fun to put these together, and I appreciate you being here. Anywhere other than, you know,
Yeah.
your couple of Instagrams people can find you?
Right, man. I'm getting the website going. At Kid Mac is helping me with that. Shout out to him. But OK Calix Instagram. What I will mention is those 4 crosses that I've done with terpene. That I've got those,
Awesome.
and they're ready to head out. You can email me at okcalix@email.com. okcalix@email.com. I'll hook you up with a good deal
That's
with all
awesome,
of his
man.
strains that I've crossed.
Yeah, man,
There's
that's
4 of them.
awesome.
Sound good? Ask me again. I love chatting. I'm a good listener. I take in, you give me a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of history in the industry and breeding, a lot of knowledge and wisdom behind you, and I'm gonna suck it all in and make
I
myself
want
better by taking it
that to
all.
all be open source. I mean,
You know
that's
what
the
I'm
thing
saying?
is why, like, I remember there being a time where I didn't have anybody I could ask anything. And so anytime people hit me up, I try to
Sure.
answer questions. I try to have a solution. I try to have a breeding answer. And it just comes from, like, I had to learn a lot of that stuff myself, you know, and so I know what it's like to be
Yeah.
overwhelmed with the info on the internet. And, you know, it's just nice to be able to share it instead of it's all behind some wall. You have to be a 10-year grower and you have to have worked in an 80,000 square foot facility, and you know, that's not growing weed. And there's so much to it. We could share with each other. It
No.
doesn't have to be, there's no proprietary knowledge here. It's all shit we learned from somebody else or from having our hands in plants.
That's right. And if you love cannabis, you want other people to love it, and you want to help them out as much as you can. Give them the
Yep.
secrets. Tell them
So we
everything.
are running a
Yep.
420 sale, 30% off everything on the website. We're also doing a free t-shirt for any order over $100, www.terpene.com. A huge shout out to OK Calix, man. We'll do this again for sure. I appreciate you showing up. Thanks, man.
Yeah.